Good morning. Who was not here yesterday? Oh, look. Well, we have to welcome you. Would the rest of you who were here yesterday say, welcome? Welcome. We have some new people in the room today. So you don't know me. My name is Oberg. I pastor the La Sierra University Church in the great mission field of Southern California. Right? I'm from Oregon, born and raised in Oregon, so when I look out over the grass and the trees, I feel right at home. I feel right at home here. I've been Adventist all my life. I was picked up at this sanitarium in Portland, Oregon. Someone gave birth to me there, left the baby up for adoption, wanted to make sure the baby went to a Seventh-day Adventist home. We don't know why. I don't know any more of the story than that. I was picked up 24 hours later, and I was in church the next week. And here I am. And watch out, if you raise your children in church, they might want to serve the church. What a terrible problem. Someone asked me this morning as I came in if I slept good last night. Now, who was here the first day on Wednesday? Was it Wednesday morning? Were some of you here Wednesday morning? Yeah. Remember I told you there was a flying creature in my room? Listen, I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be in a motel with a bed. I grew up on the campgrounds, Oregon campgrounds, for 20 years. I know about camp meeting that is much more rustic than what y'all are having here. All right? So this is not a whining complaint from a woman who came from Southern California. The first night in my hotel room, there was a flying creature, and I only knew about it because I reached my hand around to scratch my back, and I ended up on top of it, squishing part of it. All right, good, you're with me, those of you newcomers. And then it took off flying around the room. I was talking to my daughter on the phone. I said, there's a creature in the room. Let me call you back. When I called her back, she said, it did not take you that long to catch that creature. I said, it did. I caught it in a hand towel. It was something like about this big flying. You probably all know what it is, but anyway, it was not harmful, but I threw it out in the hallway. Pitched it out in the hallway for someone else to enjoy. So last night I'm sitting on my bed reading. I had a stack of books because I'm going home tonight. I got church tomorrow. Got to be ready for church tomorrow back where I live. Sitting on my bed and there's a little creature crawling up my blouse. I just looked to heaven and went, this is hilarious, God. This is hilarious. You think you're going to scare me out of Potomac conference? No. So I watched this little thing crawling on my blouse. I finally flicked it off, and it traveled around the room. And this one I smashed. I'm not usually a bug killer. I want you to know. I believe all creatures of our God and King deserve to live. And I don't eat them either. I really do believe this. So I'm sitting there reading, and about 20, 30 minutes pass, and then here I see another little creature crawling on my blouse. Now, I don't know, what would you be thinking? I don't know, what would you be thinking? I'm sitting on the bed. What would you be thinking? So I got a cup from the bathroom, and I caught this one. I put it in a little cup, and, I feel like I'm now on a field trip as a second grader. I got 2 cups from the bathroom and put them upside down, and now I got a live creature inside my cups in my room. It's so exciting. My husband and I are texting back and forth. He said, what are you doing? I'm chasing creatures in my room. He said, you might want to change hotel rooms. I said, no. Is this okay? It's already midnight now. Well, I don't want to pack up and move rooms. I'm just not going to lay on that bed. When I took the bug downstairs this morning, I have it all. It has a habitat, right? Put a little piece of grass in there. It's got a habitat. Took good care of this creature. I take it down to the front desk and I check out this morning, and I'm going to be nice about it. There's nothing to lose now. I'm going home. So I said to her, this little thing's been living in room 210 upstairs, and it's got a family. So she looks at the cup. She goes, that's a variegated carpet rug, and it won't hurt you. Okay. Variegated carpet rug. So that's what I've been dwelling with this week. Variegated carpet rugs, and they won't hurt you. So if you have them, don't worry. That's what I learned in Virginia. These bugs will not hurt you. And remember, I also told you on Wednesday, when I land back home, there'll be a habitat of lizards to welcome me at my front door. So we got our creatures too. They're just of a different kind. I have not made peace yet with the lizards in my property. I've lived in Southern California 30 years. When I moved there at age 19, I thought that I could, this is ridiculous, but I'm going to confess, and then we'll open the Word. I thought I could coax a lizard out of my house. I didn't realize what reptiles were capable of, so I had built it a little walkway, because we had just moved in and all the moving boxes were stacked up. My husband was in medical school. I'm home alone unpacking, so I made the lizard sort of like this parting of the Red Sea. All the boxes were just lined up so that I could just get a broom and sweep the thing from the kitchen out the front door. I had no idea what a lizard was capable of. So it was just ridiculous. It took me an hour to make it a pathway, and as soon as I got the broom, it crawled up and over and down inside of a box. That's what we live with in Southern California. We've been talking about the gospel for 2 days now. I asked you if you could define the gospel in 10 words or less and try and do it with some cultural awareness for the world we live in today. Try and do it with a cultural awareness. Here's the new statistic from the Barna Research Group. There are 18 million people just in North America who love Jesus, read the Bible, imagine their sins are forgiven and they may live in heaven one day, and they don't want to be in church with us. 18 million. How many Seventh-day Adventist Christians are there around the world? 18 million. Can you imagine we could double the membership of the Adventist Church with 18 million believers who are just opting out of church? They love God. They read the Bible. They pray. They just don't want to be where the Christians are. Which is why I force myself to ask the question, how can we sharpen the telling of the gospel story? There's something wrong about the gospel we've preached when 18 million people don't want to be with us. Something wrong about the way the gospel that I've lived it. That's what we've been asking the last 2 days. Now I want to approach it from another perspective, my last day with you here. That gospel, whatever that definition is that you've been coming up with, I want you to hang on to that this morning. Let's think about the story, a double reading. We'll have a reading from a film this morning and a reading from Mark, the Gospel of Mark. The film is called The Beasts of the Southern Wild. The Beasts of the Southern Wild. Now I'm going to tell you right now, my husband looks at this film and he thinks it's just one of those artsy, funky films that doesn't make any sense to him. When I watch the film, something different happens. The film fathers on this little girl called Hush Puppy and her daddy, and the context is Hurricane Katrina a few years ago, and the hurricane that flattened that territory. Hush Puppy and her father live down on the low side. There's a levee that separates them. The dry side above the levee, the low side down below. Hush Puppy and her daddy, they live in a little community that they've called the bathtub. All right? That's what they've named their community, the bathtub. Hush Puppy has been taught by her teacher at school that in this life only the strong will survive. So you better be strong, and the beasts are coming. She's been taught. The beasts know whose heart is weak, and they'll come and eat you. You got to imagine that's the narrative that's raising her. Watch.
Speed up time! Speed up! Share with the dog. Ain't that ugly over there? We got the prettiest place on earth.
Daddy says, up above the levee, on the dry side, they're afraid of the water like a bunch of babies. They built the wall that cuts us off. They think we all gonna drown down here. But we ain't going nowhere. The bathtub's got more holidays than the whole rest of the world.
Did you hear? The bathtub's got more holidays than the whole rest of the world. They think we're going to drown down here. She goes on to say, she says, up there on the dry side, they got none of what we got. They got fish stuck in plastic wrappers. They got their babies stuck in carriages and chickens stuck on sticks. One day the storm's going to blow, the grounds are going to sink, and the water's going to rise up so high there ain't going to be no bathtub, just a whole lot of water. But me and my daddy, we stay right here because we's who the earth is for. She has a mama she only imagines with a red jersey she hangs over a chair in the kitchen, a mama she's never imagined because she's been absent, because she's not completely well, and a father who's an alcoholic. Mama left her when she was a baby. There's been 2 times in this child's life she's been held. Once when they caught her as she was being delivered, and once when a prostitute danced with her one night, just the 2 of them all alone. When her father leaves her home for days alone, Hush Puppy thinks that she might have to eat their pets to survive. Another time her father leaves and he comes back in a hospital gown. And she learns that there's been a deathly diagnosis, and she sees beasts coming after her. She imagines beasts coming after her because what's she been taught? This universe is unraveling and only the strong will survive. Watch again.
That's pretty, Mom.
You're a pretty Hush Puppy. Get out of my way, you fat animal.
Daddy! 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 I learned lots of things while you were gone. If I drink all this here, I can birth like a man. Why are you wearing that dress?
Leave me alone, man.
You wearing a bracelet too?
Go to your house. You wouldn't understand.
And the water begins to come, and it rises. There's wind, and there's rain, and the neighbors leave. But Hush Puppy and her father stay. In the middle of the night, her father takes a rifle and begins to shoot up in the sky as if he can kill the storm. And she sees beasts coming after her, and the water begins to rise. She says, when the waters won't go down and everything good to eat dies, there are beasts coming after me. This is after the waters now come.
animals that didn't have a dad to put them in a boat, the end of the world already happened.
Winston! Yo, Winston!
They're all down below trying to breathe through water.
For the animals that didn't have a daddy to put them in the boat, the end of the world already arrived. With every turn in her story, she sees more beasts coming. For those who survived in the bathtub, they're evacuated. They're taken up to the dry side. But this defiant little fellowship will not remain. If you've seen the movie, you know that one night they break out because all they want to do is go back home and be together. They don't want to live up on the dry side. They want to go to the flooded side.
Mama, is that you? I've broken everything. Strong animals know when your hearts are weak. That makes them hungry when they start coming.
I've broken everything, she says. She has an alcoholic father and an absent mother, and now the waters of Hurricane Katrina. I've broken everything. Strong animals know when your heart is weak. Only the strong will survive. She's learned that a strong will solve it. But I want to suggest to you this morning that as teaching a child that a strong will solve this problem only suppresses things. Can you hold Hush Puppy's story now here in tension while we look at Mark chapter 5? Mark chapter 5, there's another story of a community separated by water. There are people on the dry side. There are people who are safe and there are not people who are not safe. Jesus is getting ready to cross over. He calls it a Sea of Galilee, Jesus does, Mark chapter 5. This is a border crossing of another kind when Jesus gets in the boat and takes the disciples with him, because on the other side, they know they're going into foreign and dangerous territory. On the other side, there's been a sense of danger for a long time now, crossing over to the other side. And a hurricane threatens Jesus and this boat, a hurricane of another kind. From the moment their feet touch the ground, Jesus and the disciples are clear how dangerous the territory. Mark chapter 5, verse 1. Jesus and the disciples came to the other side of the lake, to the region of Gergesenes, and as soon as they got out of the boat, a man possessed by an evil spirit came out of the tombs. This man lived among the tombs, and no one was strong enough to restrain him, even with a chain. He'd been secured many times with leg irons and chains, but he broke the chains and smashed the leg irons. No one was tough enough to control him. It's a scene from a horror film or from our worst nightmare, what we see in Mark chapter 5 here. A man who's so dangerous they chain him up and leave him alone. He doesn't just visit the cemetery, he lives and dwells in the cemetery. The cemetery is his home, we understand? For his protection, the community has shackled him in this remote place. Let's continue reading verse 5. Night and day in the tombs and the hills, he would howl and he would cut himself with stones. And he saw Jesus from far away. He ran and knelt before him, shouting, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Swear to God that you won't torture me." He said this because Jesus had already commanded him, "Unclean spirit, come out of this man." Night and day, this man torments the community with his howling, and he torments himself with his cutting, right? He howls for the community and he harms himself. Chained up for everyone's protection. Jesus comes and he addresses him with what we know to be a Gentile description when he says to Jesus, "Son of the Most High God." That's not the way a Jew would have addressed Jesus. So he addresses him this way and he kneels, maybe less out of worship and more out of hope that this man can help him. Maybe he knows something about the way the cosmos are ordered, the structure of things. At least Jesus is higher than the demon that possesses this man. So he kneels in front of Jesus. Matthew and Luke also tell this story, by the way. When Matthew and Luke tell the story, it's a little different, and only in Mark does Jesus pause and have this conversation. It's interesting to me that this man who bows before Jesus and the conversation that comes forward, he says to Jesus, "Don't torture me." And we're going to see he'd prefer to be left in his sickness, actually, because sickness is familiar. Wherever you're sitting this morning, at least our sickness is familiar. Wellness, friends, is work. If we're sitting here this morning battling some kind of sickness, for most of us, it's at least become familiar. If we want to be well, wellness is work. I tell my church, we are as well as our wellest member and we are as sick as our sickest member. That your wellness and my wellness are connected. Do you see? When one of us is sick, we are all sick together. So here's a man standing before Jesus. Keep reading with me. Verse 9. Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" Does anybody know the man's name? Has anyone ever called him by a name? Only in Mark does Jesus ask that most intimate and personal question of a sick person. Tell me what your name is. Let's communicate face to face, person to person. Let's treat you human. Tell me what your name is. The demon has swallowed him. The text says that he's in a demon. It's interesting way to describe it. The man is in a demon, not with a demon. The demon has swallowed him up. But inside this demon is a man who's got the fingerprint of the divine. Inside this demon is a man who's been crafted by the hands of the divine. That's who Jesus wants to talk to. Tell me what your name is. He responded, "Legion is my name, because we are many." They pleaded with Jesus not to send them out of that region. Is this the man answering, or is this the demon answering? I'm going to tell you yes and yes. Because where is the man in all of this? The man is still here. The man is inside the demon. It's a confusing story to most of us today. It challenges our sensibilities. I'm going to say yes and yes. There's a demon, and they're going to come on to name the demon, whose name is Legion, because we are many. Legion, my name is many, because we are many. They pleaded with Jesus not to send them away. I apologize, I read that. He, they, one, more. You see the pronouns, they, them, many. Anyone in Jesus' audience that day would understand that he's just answered, "My name is Legion." They would recognize that as a battalion, as a troop of an army. We've got many here. There's a battle going inside this man's mind. No one would miss this. A large herd of pigs at this time was feeding on the hillside. Remember now, in Roman territory, a man possessed by a demon of soldiers, and now a large herd of pigs is feeding on the hillside. Send us into the pigs, they begged. They begged, the demons, the man. Send us into the pigs. Let us go into the pigs. Jesus gave them permission. So the unclean spirits left the man and they went into the pigs. And the herd of about 2,000 pigs rushed down the cliff into the lake and drowned. And now we have the pigs in the story. This is a heavy story and a heavy topic this morning. And now we have the pigs. In most all illustrations of this story of Jesus and the man with the demons, the pigs figure prominently. It's the pigs going over the edge of the cliff. It's the pigs in the cartoon and the illustration for the children that they draw. Of course it's the pigs, because the pigs are the unclean symbolism, right? The pigs remind us that we're in pagan territory, right? Anyone planning on having a bacon, lettuce, tomato sandwich today? It's not going to be the sheep in the story, correct? It's going to be the pigs. Now the pigs have gone over the edge of the cliff. So far we have a man with an unclean spirit. We have an unclean animal. And we have Israel listening. They're calling Jesus by a name that's not of their own. There are tombs and demons. Verse 14, Mark 4 still. Verse 14. Those who tended the pigs ran away and told the story in the city and in the countryside. People came to see what had happened, and they came to see Jesus, and they saw the man who used to be demon-possessed, and they saw the very man who had been filled with many demons sitting there fully dressed and completely sane, and they were filled with awe. The word is actually fear, not worship. It's the same word when the storm came upon the boat. They're terrified. They're looking at a well man and they're terrified. Are we together? The well man is frightening them more. Is more frightening than when he was demon-possessed. Those who had actually seen what had happened to the demon-possessed man told the others about the pigs. And then they pleaded with Jesus to leave their region. Leave because you've destroyed our property. Leave because we were just renting those pigs. Leave. We needed to return those pigs to our landowner. We don't have the money now. Jesus, you destroyed our livelihood. Leave. Yes, Rome is rigorous and oppressive, but at least we know the rules with Rome. Leave. Because the last time someone disrupted status quo, they burned our houses and took our women and our daughters. Jesus, leave now. And so Jesus goes to the boat. Verse 18. While he's climbing into the boat, the one who had been demon-possessed pleaded with Jesus to let him come along as one of the disciples. To me, this is the most reasonable request of the whole story. Do not leave me here. Let me get in the boat with you now. I'm not staying with these people. I've been chained up here long enough. Jesus, let me come with you. But Jesus wouldn't allow it. Go home to your own people, Jesus said, and tell them what the Lord has done for you and how he's shown you mercy. The man went away and began to proclaim in the 10 cities all that Jesus had done for him, and everyone was amazed. The most common question in the gospel stories that Jesus asks people, the most frequently asked question by Jesus is, what do you want me to do for you? Here is a man who told Jesus, this is what I want you to do for me. Jesus didn't even have to ask. The man just says, let me come with you. Don't leave me here. And Jesus denies that request. Because apparently Jesus needs at least one well person on the other side. Somebody has to stay on that side of the levee. Now this morning, friends, you know the story well. How would you like to hear it today? Remember, every time we open Scripture, we hear a story again. And wherever we're standing today, however God is meeting us today, we get to hear the story fresh. It's why we keep reading the Bible. It's why we keep our Scripture open. It's why we reread familiar stories. How shall we hear the story today? Some people read this as a political story. If you just take out the word legion in Rome, we could insert the United States of America, right? We can hear this as my name is, instead of Legion, my name is the United States of America. The demon could be the United States. Some people think this is a political story. We could insert the Republic of China. My name is the Republic of China. We can hear this as a political critique. Some authors do. We can hear this as Christian evangelism, which is quite frequently the way it gets summarized. Jesus had to send some evangelists over to the other side as soon as they chased the pigs out of town, the symbolism for everything unclean. They cleaned up the other side of the levee, then they could come back home. You could read the story that way, as Christian evangelism, crossing over to the other side. In fact, one author, Werner Kelber, says it this way: the ugly side of town with the tombs and the pigs and the demons and the shackles and the pagan language, when we've drowned the pigs, that Gentile land has been exorcised and cleansed of its pollution, and we can move on to the next territory. You could read the story that way. This morning, and I don't know if anywhere else on the campgrounds these few days anyone is talking about this topic, so this morning I want to hear the story in a very literal way. There is a man who is not well. In his mind, he is not well. And I invite you to hear the demon as real demonic issues of mental disorder, of troubled lives. In Jesus' day, there was a market on madness. No shortage of people doing exorcisms and all kinds of folk healings, right? Those are plentiful in history and in the Bible stories. In the days of early Adventist pioneers, and even through the death of Ellen White, mental health disorder and disease, these were still areas of exploration. They were not well known. Even with a denomination that founded the Medical College of Evangelists, and a denomination with a message of wholeness and wellness, we don't talk often about mental unhealth. What if we just heard the story this morning as a real man whose mind and body have been plagued because his mind is not well? You see, it used to be we would talk about mental health and disorder as a moral fall. I'm going to say that again. If you're sick in your mind, you're just not trying hard enough. If you would just give this to Jesus, you could be well in your mind. If you're sick with depression, you just need to surrender to Jesus. But we know so much more today, and we need to walk in that awareness, to name the beast. We all have to name the beast, and we all have to have homes and churches that we're willing to name the beast within. The reason we have so much outer obnoxiousness in our world is because we have inner beasts. And all those definitions you're working on for the gospel, they matter for every person dealing with a beast. Quickly this morning, here's what the National Institutes of Mental Health are telling us. That 1 in 4 of the population, just dealing with North America, 1 in 4 of us fight the beast called mental health disorder. Look around the room this morning, friends. Go ahead. Look left and look right. You hope somebody's not looking at you? Go ahead. Look backwards and forwards if you need to. You hope it's not you? I don't know. Who comes from a family of 4 in here today? Right? 1 in 4. Don't point at each other over there. We got to name that beast, friends. Because we're only as well as our sickest member. If someone in your home, in your children's friendship circle, if someone in our church community is suffering through this beast, we're all suffering through it. 1 in 4 of us in America are suffering with some kind of mental health disorder. 21 million of us fight mood disorders like depression and bipolar disease. We fight anxiety, attention deficit disorder, addictions of all kinds. The statistics in the Adventist church are no different than anywhere else. We got to tell the truth about our beasts. We have autism and eating disorders, personality disorders, and then schizophrenia. Yesterday, these kinds of problems, addiction, let's just say, that was considered a huge moral falling. But today, 3 decades of good, solid research tells us that addiction is as severe as chronic disease of any kind. Anybody fighting heart disease? Anybody fighting diabetes? You might as well be fighting addiction, the specialists tell us. The genetics matter, they tell us. That targeting the young matters. Do you know that most of our children, a mental health disorder is diagnosable early in their life? They don't have to wait until they're 30, 40, 50 and have made terrible decisions. 1 in 5 of our children are diagnosable by the age of 14. Isn't that phenomenal? That at the age of 14 we can detect this. And 1 in 5 of our children are seriously debilitated. If you read the story in Mark chapter 5, and if we think the problem is just about some unclean pigs and some Gentiles on the other side of the water who need to clean their life up, then we need to read the story again. This is a story about possession. Who has a claim on my life? Who has a claim on my mind and my body? Who has a claim on my relationships? Who has authority over the good and the bad, over all of it? Who has ultimate power is what Mark 5 is asking. I want you to hear this morning a demon-possessed man as a real person that could be any of us in the room, that could be anyone, one of us in our church. That Gospel of Mark began with this line. Mark chapter 1, this is the good news of Jesus Christ. There are no less than 4 demon possessions in the Gospel of Mark. Every time Jesus comes across a demon-possessed person, Jesus shouts out, like Moses to Pharaoh, let my people go. Jesus wants us all well. The gospel means we all deserve to be well. We need churches and homes where it is safe to name this beast. We keep saying the line in front of each other at my church. We are safe with God, and we are safe with each other. I've been saying it about 5 years now. I hope we'll start believing it one day. We are safe with God, and we are safe with each other, which means we're safe to name our beasts within. We're safe to tell these stories. I want to read you this morning, as we conclude, just a couple of stories from my community. I ask people to share some of their stories of the beast within. I read these because it's too hard for you, where you're sitting today, to stand up and tell all of us what the beast is. You struggle. It's not safe here. So I read these stories so we can all understand what we all struggle with. I already told you I'm adopted, right? Someone dropped me off at a hospital. What do you think my issues are? What is my beast? Abandonment, right? Let me read you a couple stories. My beast is self-doubt. It's a very strong chain in my life. It's a recording in my head that rolls over and over and over again, that I'm not smart enough, that I'm not thin enough, that I'll never be liked. For 15 years, from the age of 12 to 27, I fought a losing battle with an eating disorder. I ate 300 calories a day, and I threw up upwards to 100 times a day. I was shamed to my weight. I was terrified that I was disgusting. I felt if I could control this one thing, then maybe, just maybe, I could control the voices in my head telling me how horrible I was. One day, a very smart man told me he wasn't going to let me lose this fight, and he knew I was losing. He told me that there were children that I needed to nurture in my home, my children. I needed to watch them grow up and become women, and they needed to hear my story. I went through 2 years of intensive therapy and many years of daily struggle, and I wouldn't say that freedom has come easily. I wouldn't even say that it's come completely. I still have a battle. There's still a voice in my head, and it feeds my negativity, but there is also a sea of faces that motivate me. I'm teaching my daughters to accept who they are in whatever form that comes. I owe them that. My demon is an eating disorder. Here's another one. Once upon a time, there was a normal Seventh-day Adventist family. There was a father and a mother and 3 daughters, and the father was strong and loving and hard-working, and the mother was a survivor, strong in her beliefs and loyal to her family. And there were 3 daughters. While all different in looks and talents, they were raised to be hard workers, honest, family-oriented. It was a normal family, the most normal family in the world. And then 8 years ago, it began. It snuck up on us. It started to change our normal family. It got a name 6 years ago, an ugly name, Alzheimer's. How could our 68-year-old marathon-running, vegan-eating, conservative Adventist, our energetic grandfather, our respected father-in-law, how could he suffer such a cruel, dignity-stripping disease? This normal family didn't have a father who was fired from a job because he couldn't remember to do simple directions. That wasn't normal for us. He didn't have a spouse who became a different and violent, sometimes, man when the sun went down, or a grandfather who forgot where you were and didn't know your names. Alzheimer's has broken us down. We are sleep-deprived. We are emotionally hurt. We are lonely. My father has to be restrained. He's been put in a psychiatric ward. It is cruel and it is inhumane. And Alzheimer's has taught us to be more supportive of each other. It's taught us to be patient. It's tested our faith, and it's taught us to be open to the differences in other people. Alzheimer's has made us realize that no family is ever normal or disease-free. For those of you with a normal family like ours right now, know how important it is, if you have a friend suffering from this, that you answer the phone. Know that the occasional phone call, the occasional prayer means something. Know how much it is to receive people from the church community who offer to cook or go grocery shopping or sit with your loved one and entertain him for a few hours so you can just get a haircut. Know also that this is not an infectious disease. Please don't treat it like one. Oh, how we are holding on to the time when Jesus comes to heal and take us home. Can I read you a couple more? Are you okay? My name is Mark, and my struggle is addiction. It's heroin, cocaine, marijuana, alcohol. Due to the fact that I was raised in a strict Adventist home, I kept this a secret most all of my life until I couldn't keep it a secret any longer. I suffer a great deal of guilt because I couldn't tell anyone. I also learned that I was bad at keeping it a secret. It was like I was living a double life. I had to lie to my family about everything I was doing, and I desperately wanted to quit the drugs. I simply couldn't. To me, it was a living hell, and I was hooked both physically and mentally. I was put in a rehab institution. I decided that I had finally had enough when I was on this drug binge, and I wound up in the psych ward, and I'd been handcuffed to the hospital bed like a demon-possessed man on the other side of the lake. I lay there completely naked. It was very demoralizing, and I realized that I would either wind up in more institutions like this, in jail, or eventually die. And at that moment, I made a cry out to God for help. I begged. And I was quiet. I felt a sense of serenity that I had never experienced before. My desire to use drugs and alcohol left me. That doesn't happen that way for everyone. It was this time in treatment things went different. I actually listened to what the counselors told me. I followed their instructions. I went to my appointments. It was hard. It was painful. But I had help from counselors and family and church and God. It's not always been easy. I would not trade for anything in the world what God has done for me. God has blessed me. My sobriety date is July 4, 2008. Yes, I continue to attend Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm just going to read you one more. There are times that there are people that think if you are a Christian and you have Jesus in your heart that you can't suffer depression. There are many followers of Christ, like me, who have depression. There are followers of Christ who don't know what this illness is. How did I handle my depression? I looked for help. I communicated every day with God. He sent people to be my company and my distraction, but my husband also suffered depression. If someone asks us how we are, I want to be able to answer, we are bad. It's really hard in our home. I just want to be able to tell the truth. And finally, a family called the McFarlands. Everyone's life changes when they have kids. For us, it changed a month early when our twins were born, Bryce and Madison. They were born at 23 weeks of age. Our first emotion was terror. We had no idea what this early birth would mean for us, and the doctors tried to prepare us for the worst. Oh, we cried, and we prayed for miracles. Madison died in our arms at 18 hours of age. I was in the hospital the day Madison died, by the way. I remember how these parents thought she would pull through no problem, and within 18 hours we were holding a dead baby. She was only 1 pound, 1 ounce, just over 12 inches long. We were surrounded by family. We said goodbye to her. The pastor was offering a prayer. We don't remember what the pastor said. We just know how much it meant to us that people were present. There wasn't Facebook at the time. Word spread via email, and soon we received promises of prayer from as far away as Australia, almost New Zealand. We added our prayers of healing. People added the prayers of healing for Bryce, our son who was remaining. It was critical for him. There was an increased chance of brain hemorrhage for him in the first 10 days of his life. We made it 8 days before Bryce suffered a grade 4 bleed in his brain. The CAT scan showed nearly half of the left side of the brain and part of the right side completely destroyed, and no one could tell us what this would mean for his life. Slowly, very slowly, Bryce started growing. The ventilator kept him alive, and eventually they removed that ventilator. He began to eat, and 4 months later, he was off all of that equipment and just shy of 5 pounds, and they sent him home. We drove 25 miles to spend time with him every single day during all those 4 months. My wife went twice a day. It was emotionally and physically beyond words. Before Bryce was sent home from the hospital, it was determined that his retinas were detached due to his prematurity. So he underwent a surgery to repair that, and we prayed that he would have sight. But as it turns out, he is blind in both eyes. Today, Bryce is 14 years old. He has the mental capacity of a 9-month-old. He doesn't walk. He doesn't even crawl. He cannot support his weight. He cannot feed himself. Sometimes he refuses to eat. We dress him. We change his diaper. We bathe him. We carry him. We can't communicate with him, but he does communicate with us. He makes lots of noises. Many of them are loud and inappropriate, but he has the most incredible, precious laugh. Bryce has an intractable seizure disorder. Doctors have been able to help keep it under control, but not eliminate the seizures. Far too often, he'll cry out in pain, and he experiences violent muscle contractions. Watching him suffer like this is gut-wrenching. Holding him as his body shakes uncontrollably, it's the most painful thing we've experienced. We pray that Bryce will outgrow these seizures and that they will find a way to control them. We've had people tell us how difficult it is to understand God's plan, but we refuse to believe that any of this could ever be God's plan. Did you hear this, saints? Because people who fight beasts were made to be well. This is not God's plan to create better, refined faith in the believer. This is what happens when evil creeps into God's good story. We have to name that. These parents says, we've been told that God doesn't give people more than they can handle. People who say that have not lived in our home. Statistics show that relationships between parents with special needs children will most likely fail. We cannot imagine worshiping a God that plans or gives these challenges to an innocent child. Please stop saying things like this to people in pain. We are fortunate to worship in a community that demonstrates the God we believe in. The outpouring of love from our congregation at the funeral of our little girl is something we'll never forget. The hugs, the tears, the encouragement. This is what our God is like. After these 14 years, we have adjusted our expectations, and we have had to maintain our sanity. We would love for a miracle to occur, but we live day by day, and we adjust our reality as best we can. Bryce is growing bigger. It's becoming harder to carry him, to bathe him, to care for him, and we can't imagine what our life will be like when he's 21, so we don't. We will find a way to deal with that when it happens. Our beast is severe mental disorder. The Gospel of Mark, the Jesus of the Gospel of Mark, empowers us to be free from that beast, to name that beast, and to be the community that allows the gospel to do this work. I want you to watch as Hush Puppy ends her story. She comes home and learns that her father is dying. Alcoholic father. What's the disease? Cirrhosis. She comes home now because her father is dying.
You're my friend, kind of. I gotta take care of mine.
I got to take care of mine. She goes inside and feeds her daddy a bite of biscuit and fried chicken. And he dies. I'm going to pray. We're asking you, God, to create the generosity inside of us. So we create churches and homes that allow for a God who casts out beasts. Create in us a generosity to be safe with each other as we are safe with you. Calm our own fear and anxiety because we don't know what to do with sickness. Remind us that our wellness is connected. When I look across the room, may I ask that person's name. May I listen to their story. And may we all be ready for the God that intervenes. We're reminded today that God usually intervenes through other people. So make us that generous church. In the name of Jesus, we all pray today. I invite you to say, Amen. Amen.